Okay, so today we're going to be starting a new unit, and the topic of the unit is geology. So you have a blank student learning map that you're going to fill out and complete. Make sure you complete this as page number 1 because this is now going to be under a new tab titled Geology. So this is going to be your page 1. Make sure you put your name and your number on it. These areas are completed for you. Your key learning is going to be the present is the key to the past. Our essential question for the entire unit, which is not a large unit, but we do have a lot to cover in it, is how do rocks and fossils record Earth's geologic history? The first concept that we're going to be dealing with is in this first area, and you'll see that this is completed for you. Our concept is Earth story. And our lesson essential question for this concept is what is the difference between uniformitarianism and catastrophism or catastrophism? You'll hear it pronounced both ways. So we're going to start off by putting your vocabulary words in these areas here. Notice you only have 4. So starting off with your vocabulary words, make sure you listen to the pronunciation of the words and kind of say them in your head so that you know how they're pronounced when you hear them and when you're called on to say them. Your first is uniformitarianism. Uniformitarianism. Break that down. Uniformitarianism. And the word you hear in there is uniform. So uniformitarianism. If you slow down and use your vowels and your syllables, it's very easy to say. And if at any time you need to pause the video so that you can write, then do so. But I'm going to move on. The next one is catastrophism or catastrophism, either way. And again, you break that down. Catastrophism. Catastrophism. Our third word is paleontology. And again, that's paleontology. And we remember that ology is the study of. We're going to talk about this in the lesson. Then we have paleontologist. Paleontologist. Alright, so this learning map needs to go in your binder because now we're going to start with the lesson. And in doing that, we're going to look at the uniformitarianism versus catastrophism. And I want you to take a moment and just listen and watch the current video.
So first part, we got catastrophism. I always have a problem like saying that word. It's a weird. I gotta think about it every time I see it. All right, so this is a doctrine of catastrophism that states that the Earth's landscape has been shaped by great catastrophes. So it's almost like an ideology on how they thought like all these different things on the Earth were created. That it was just a series of these catastrophic events that created canyons and mountain ranges or whatever it might be. And they basically looked at everything around them and said like, hey, that mountain over there, like that formed in one huge earthquake and made this mountain form. Which, I mean, it was an idea at the time, so it's definitely something that they believed, or they thought was happening. Right. And an example of that is a meteorite impact, and that's the picture that's shown in the slide. And we know that that if this were to occur, and it has happened in Earth's past, that it would dramatically affect the Earth's landscape and everything around it in a really short amount of time. So there's probably some opposing viewpoints to that, right? Something that wasn't quite that. People didn't always agree with that. If we take a look, it's actually a different viewpoint called uniformitarianism. Another goofy one to say. Yeah. So this one basically says that the physical, chemical, biologic laws that are happening today were happening in the geologic past. That they've always been happening, that they've never ever stopped happening. So what's going on in this picture here, Mr. Z? All right, so we take a look at the Grand Canyon there, and at the bottom there we have the Colorado River. And the Colorado River flows, it moves sediment, it erodes away, it kind of goes deeper and deeper and deeper, and then eventually creates that canyon. And this is not a catastrophic event, right? This has been going on for a really, really long time, and now we have the Grand Canyon. Yeah, it's been happening for tens to dozens of millions of years, so it's something that it's a really long time period, and before they didn't really have that kind of idea that the Earth was even around that long. Yeah, and that's kind of the big thing. They thought that the Earth was not as old as we now know it is, so that's why they thought it had to be these catastrophes that created a lot of the landscape around them. Yeah, and the big take-home message they said was the present is the key to the past. So they're saying, like, kind of what's happening now was happening before, and that's how we see our landscape. Exactly. Cool. So that gets us into that time thing. We were talking about how catastrophism, it didn't seem like it took much time, but uniformitarianism takes a long time. Yeah. That's where they had to try and figure out, like, well, how old is the Earth actually? Yeah, and that's and 4.6 billion years old is the age of the Earth, and that's a huge, huge number. And we'll talk more about that in class and actually do some analogies to kind of give you a better idea of just how much time that is. And how did we figure out the Earth was that old? Well, they looked at a couple different things. They looked at radioactive isotopes, so how different isotopes broke down, and they break down at a really slow rate, and they could measure the ratios of isotopes to actually see how old a rock was. Yeah, and then also the rock sequences too. Of taking a look at like the Grand Canyon, for example, those rock layers that are on the very, very bottom of the canyon, those weren't placed there in some manner, a few thousand years ago. I mean, it was a lot longer time had passed for those layers to be there. Yeah, and just the kind of idea of those rocks are different ages too. Like the ones on bottom, do you think they're older or younger than the ones on top? I think they'd be a lot older than the ones on top. Yeah, and then they looked at fossils. They saw just some preserved remains of animals, and they had never seen them on Earth before. So at some point they must have been here. And they said, it probably was happening a while ago. So we started putting dates to things later on. All right, so putting it all together, how does deep time relate to uniformitarianism and catastrophism? Well, just basically, we know that the catastrophism doesn't take that much time at all. We're looking at changing the landscape of the Earth, where uniformitarianism takes a really, really long time. But both of them have actually been happening kind of simultaneously just over the course of a long time. So we've had meteorite impacts. We've had tsunamis that take place. Sure. Huge earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, things like that have impacted the Earth's landscape in a really, really short amount of time. And those are catastrophes that have happened. And they've been happening for basically the duration of the entire history of Earth, yeah. And this uniformitarianism, those little processes, things that are happening now, have been happening that whole time on Earth. Exactly.
All right. Before we move on, I just want to remind you that geology is the study of Earth. Geo is Earth. Ology, again, is study. So this whole unit, we're going to be studying the Earth. We talked about the landscapes underwater and the landforms underwater. Now we're going to be moving out of the water and actually talking about the Earth and digging deeper into the Earth. So what you need to do is take out a blank sheet of paper. And again, you need to pause the video if you need time to do this. You're going to make sure that you title it Earth Story. This should be page 2 now. And make sure you put the hashtag on there. Earth Story, Wiggins Science. All right, now in the video they talked about 2 theories. One was uniformitarianism and one was catastrophism. Now, if we look at it this way, uniformitarianism, one thing that they mentioned in the video, and one word that you hear is uniform. Now, the theory of uniformitarianism, it's a gradual change. Gradual meaning that it takes time to do so. So it just, things happen, but they happen at a slower pace. It's just going to take some time. And this theory was thought about by a scientist named Hutton, was his last name. And one thing that can help you remember this theory is the fact that it has the word uniform. Uniform is just all the same. There's no difference to it. There's no nothing spontaneous about it. It's like for instance, we come to school in uniforms. There's no spontaneity. There's no differences to it. It just happens and it's expected and it happens gradually. The other theory that was mentioned was catastrophism. So you need to be drawing your notes just like this. You need to have one circle with the information uniformitarianism in there, and then a separate circle, and we're talking about catastrophism. Now, this theory is a sudden change, meaning that it's not gradual. It happens suddenly. It's less time. It's more impactful. And the scientist that thought about this theory was Lyell, and that should be Lyell. I apologize for the misspell. It's Lyell. Again, Lyell. This L should not be there. And the word that will help you remember this theory is catastrophe. Catastrophes are boom, bang. There's something that happens suddenly, like your earthquakes and your volcanoes and your tsunamis. It happens suddenly. It's something that's just not expected. It just happens. So over time, these two theories kind of clashed. Some people believed it happened our Earth evolved one way, and some people believe that our Earth evolved another way. So we had the uniformitarianists and we had the catastrophists, um, where they thought that the Earth happened in these two ways. Over time, we realized that we needed to mesh these two theories together. So here we have our uniformitarianism theory, and we have our catastrophism theory. So make sure you draw these two circles. Now we're putting them together. We're creating a similarity. And here we have your double bubble. And we put these two together and notice they mesh and they overlap. And what this created was something called modern geology. So make sure you mesh them together. So what we're saying is we do have things that happen gradually. Our earth had layers have been placed gradually. And then bam, suddenly something happens. An earthquake, a volcano, a tsunami. Then our earth continues to gradually happen and bam, something happens to change it or to create a new landform or things of that nature. So the both theories are intact. They happen together, and that creates our modern geology, our modern study of the earth. So our modern way that we understand that our earth has evolved and how it is continuously changing. So if you have space on the bottom, you can continue writing on the bottom. Other than that, turn your paper over to the back. And in the back, we're going to continue. We're going to talk about modern geology. And this is geologic change. Remember, earth, geo means earth. So this is geologic or earth changes. And they happen, or geologic change happens gradually. So the earth changes gradually. And then, bam, it's interrupted by a catastrophe. So geologic change happens gradually and isn't interrupted by catastrophes. Those are sudden changes. And that's how we understand the Earth to evolve and how it has developed over this 4.6 billion years age of the Earth. Now, I want you to write the word my interpretation, but I want you to interpret modern geology in your own words. Pause this video so that you can do so. All right, you should have come up with your own interpretation, and I'm going to be checking that. But moving on, the study of geologic change involves something called paleontology, and paleontology is the study of past life. Now think about what things we use to study past life. And paleontology is studied by people called paleontologists. They are the studiers of past life. So if you don't know what a paleontologist is, then maybe next to this you want to write the studier of past life. And if you were answering that question of what types of things we use to study past life and you said fossils, then you would be correct. And obviously, we do use the fossils and the old remains of, which are the old remains of things to study past life. Now, I want you to write this next statement down, which is the present is the key to the past. And then I want you to take some time and write what that means to you. Interpret what that means. Now this concludes the portion of this lesson.